The journey matters as much as the destination. Well-intentioned people like to remind those of us who are driven souls about this advice, but I never bought it. I never bought it. What is it into the whole journey thing? I'm a destination person by nature. In business and family life, you name it, I like to know where I'm going and how I'm going to get there, and the rest is just scenery, right? Right? Maybe? Does this sound like you or someone you know? A destination person focused on the goal. Can't wait to get there. And once you get there, you go to the next, the next, the next, the next, the next. And I have reached a lot of theirs that I set my sights on. As Rick kind of gave you a little glimpse, I'm still a little guilty of that because I'm still thinking about the next there, but that's okay. I think that's just the way God made me. But I've reached a lot of those destinations. Probably the biggest one was having the ride of my life as an entrepreneur to build a company from scratch, literally sitting at my kitchen table, and have the chance to sell it to a global organization and become a part of a global team. Who would have ever thought? That's pretty exciting stuff, isn't it? It's got all the success stuff you look for, all the extrinsic motivations, the money, the power, the fame, all the great stuff, right? This is what we work for. This is what we want to be leaders for, right? Well, I will tell you what happened. I got a lot of that stuff. I got a lot of those theirs. And I kind of looked around and I thought, wait a minute, this is it? This is it? I thought this was supposed to be, the height of success. Isn't this what everybody wants? Isn't this what we're working for? And it left me very hollow in a lot of ways. And an interesting thing happened to me a few years ago. This was at a period of time, and I'll tell you about it in a minute, when our company was going through a rapid period of growth. We actually grew over 500% in 5 years. So it was one of these kind of rides. Very exciting, very scary. But we were going through this rapid period of growth. And everything looked really good on the outside. And I stopped sleeping. Now, I didn't have any trouble going to bed at night. And my husband will tell you, be talking to me, and my head would hit the pillow, and I was out, completely out, mid-sentence. But about 2 or 3 every morning, I was wide awake. And I was wide awake to stay. I could never go back to sleep. And sure, I was thinking about all of the concerns at work. But there was one question that was burning in the back of my brain that would never go away. And that question was, is this all there is? Is this all there is? And for a destination person to ask themselves that question is a pretty scary place to be. Because what was all this striving for? If the destination wasn't worth reaching, why was I working so hard? Why had I planned this whole career and life for myself? And it didn't turn out to be all that rewarding. Well, the good news is I had found an answer. And the answer is this. It isn't that the destination is not worth pursuing, but in my pursuit of the destination, I had missed the journey along the way. And maybe, just maybe, if I could figure out how to make the journey matter more, could I find real reward and satisfaction in this leadership journey? Kind of a tall order, but I was hopeful. And it was funny because right about this time, my husband and I were kind of processing some of this, and I was trying to find my way back to sleeping again. And we kind of looked at each other eye to eye, and we said, you know what, we have not taken a vacation together in 10 years, because he was a working professional too at the time. He's an orthopedic surgeon, he's retired now, but both of us were kind of the classic 2-income kind of workaholic kind of couple, unfortunately. We were raising our kids, and they were kind of preteen at this stage. And he said, we need to go on a vacation together. And so there began, of course, the negotiation of where are you going to go, that would make both of you happy. And in a moment of insanity, I agreed to get on the back of his motorcycle and take a 10-day trip. And I remember thinking, this is such a bad idea. He had long loved fast cars and fast bikes, you know, for sure. But I thought, this is going to be incredibly uncomfortable. Your hair is going to be all messed up because you'll have to wear a helmet. You can't even really see because you're on the back, so you're doing this the whole time. And gosh, you're not even in control. You're not even driving the bike. You're sitting on the back. And I thought, I can't believe I'm doing this. But I love the guy, and I thought, you know, this would be a good thing for us to do together. And I will tell you what happened. I got on the back of that bike, and I never looked back. I was hooked. I was hooked on motorcycling. I'm telling you, it is the greatest way to travel on two wheels. The sights, the sounds, the smells are intoxicating. I mean, it's amazing. So I always have to stop and ask at this point in my talk, do I have any fellow riders in the room? Fellow riders. Come on, somebody's got to ride something on two wheels. I've had people say, well, does a scooter count? Okay, in the back, what do you ride? Okay, very good. That still counts, Rick. That still counts. I've had people ask if motocross counts. I said, hey, it all counts, guys, if you sort of get the idea of what it's like to be on a bike. It's amazing. I mean, you experience things you never experience in a car because you miss it in the car. So we came back from this trip, and my husband said something interesting to me one night. He said, you were meant to ride. You were meant to ride. I said, me? Ride? Oh, no, I think I should probably stay on the back. I think that's a good idea. He said, no, Elise, you were meant to ride. So I took the motorcycle safety course, I took the lessons, and I remember sitting in the Friday night class. So, you know, you like study in advance, and you have a test you have to pass, and then on Saturday is like the riding course, which is really a challenging day because you have to get on a bike and have to go through all these different tests to see if you pass them. But Friday night, we are sitting in a local motorcycle dealership, and a bunch of different people in the room, and we're listening to our instructor, and his name is Big Mike, which is exactly what you think you'd get in a motorcycle safety course, right? Big Mike, he was big, and he had tattoos on both arms, and he had a black leather vest on, you know. But the guy was brilliant about bikes, he really was. And, you know, you're kind of in and out of it listening to him, you're kind of studying your book and worrying about the test. And then he said something that caught all of our attention. He said, I'm going to teach you something that will save your life, so listen up. He said, the most dangerous place to be on a bike is in an intersection, not for obvious reasons, but he said the next most important place for you to have all your wits about you is when you approach a turn. And the reason is because in the turn of the road are where all the sort of the hazards kind of gather, the oil slicks, the rocks, the sand, the gravel, you know, things like that. Not to mention just the trajectory of the turn itself. If you guess wrong, you'll end up in a ditch. If you've seen people in a ditch at a turn, you know that they guessed wrong. So he said, this is what you do. You look into the turn as you approach it. You assess the hazards in the turn itself, but you don't stare straight into them because your bike follows your eyes. And he said there's actually a name for that. It's called target fixation. He said don't stare and fixate on the hazards in front of you. Instead, keep your eyes focused on where you want to end up. And if you do, you will get where you want to go. That's called looking through the turn. And I remember sitting there, and it was like everything else just kind of fell away. And I thought, this is the greatest metaphor for business and life I've ever heard. Looking through the turn. Do not fixate on the hazards in front of you, but use your instincts and your experience to make the adjustments you need in the turn. And what do? You keep your eyes focused on where you want to end up. And I thought, this is the key to successful motorcycling, but it's the key to successful leadership. Think about it. Keep your eyes focused on where you want to end up. It doesn't mean you don't pay attention to the hazards in front of you, but you don't stare straight into them. You remain nimble, responsive, and you adjust through life as you go. And I thought, that's it. That's going to be, and it kind of has become my mantra ever since. So as we talk together today about leadership, keep this in mind. looking through the turn, and better yet, think of it as leading through the turn. How do I become a leader who can keep their eyes focused on where they want to end up, to take themselves and their team and their companies where they want to go? It's a great goal. Now, let me share with you a couple of practical lessons where God has been teaching me about how to look and lead through the turn. As you take an adventure, and on a motorcycle, Ray and I take lots of adventures together, there is a place that you always begin your journey before you ever get on your bike, right? And it's to plan your route. It's to get the maps out, to pull them up on the computer, to kind of look at all the different roads, and because there's lots of ways you can go. And we always like to think, well, is it going to be pretty there? Are the roads interesting and challenging? Are there lots of twists and turns that would make it kind of fun? Is there a cool place to sit and get a cup of coffee and a piece of pie? I mean, what's the journey, the road going to be like? And we plan our route. But you know what I will tell you? A lot of times we get out on the road and we go a different way. Sometimes we have to, but sometimes we want to. And isn't this the same true in life? You end up planning your route, but you go a different way for a lot of reasons. When I first had this dream to build a company, I was working in corporate life in Memphis. My husband and I, he'd been in medical school there for a number of years, and I was very happy in corporate life. And my husband and I were having the conversation once he finished his training where we were going to move for him to start his practice. And I am a big city gal, I will confess. I love great American cities like Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, New York, you name it. I love them all. And I kind of had this dream ever since I sat in your seat at ACU. It was just real simple. It was just two words. It was world domination. I wanted to be in charge of the world. And I thought, once we get done with all this training stuff that my husband's doing, we will move on and move up, right? That's the plan. So we started talking about where we were going to go. And I actually put together one of these kind of wall grids, on the wall in our house in Memphis. And down one side, I had a list of all the places that we might go. And across the top was all the different criteria, like quality of life, career opportunities, churches, things to do, amenities, things like that. And we started the interview process. And my husband kept getting attracted to all these little places. And sure enough, we get a call from a little place in Arkansas, Fayetteville, Arkansas. And he said, hey, I've been invited to come and interview with the orthopedics group there. What do you think? And I said, you go and tell me how it is. And I don't even think I'm going to put it on the chart. That doesn't even really make the list. He said, oh, come on, it'll be great. And there were some graduates from his residency program who were there. He said, it'll be a lot of fun. We could go watch the Razorbacks play. It'd be great. And he talked me into it. Again, in a moment of insanity, be careful who you marry because, you're going to do all kinds of crazy things because you love them. And so sure enough, we go on this trip and we come back from the weekend. And on the way back home, he said, what do you think? I said, oh, it's a nice little place, but no, this is not where we're going to go. And he looked at me on the plane, no joke, and he said, I think this is it. And I said, quit kidding. Smacked him on the shoulder. He said, no, Elise, this is it. This is the place. And long story short, this is where we decided to go. But I will tell you, I put up a pretty good fight. And I was so mad about this decision because I love the guy. I'm going to go where he wants to go. But I was really mad. This was not in the plan. And there's a story. My husband says, you always have to tell this story, Elise. You got to tell the story because it's true. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but it doesn't really put me in the best light. But here's the story. I would come home from work and I would still be so mad at him that I pulled a lawn chair out of the garage and I popped it up in the driveway. And I wouldn't talk to him. He would come out of the house to talk to me. How are you doing today? And I'm like, nope, not today. Not talking to you today. Just go right on back in the house. And all the neighbors would come over and they'd say, hey, have you guys figured out where you're moving to? I would say, yeah, we did. Fayetteville, Arkansas. They were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And of course they were saying that because back then nobody had really heard of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Northwest Arkansas today is quite the place. I'll tell you about that in a second. But it was such a hard time for me. Sitting in that chair was so mad. And I really realized at that moment that I had a choice to make. I could go and be bitter about this and hope it didn't work and maybe do all I could to kind of undermine this move. I could go and be bitter, or I could go and let change make me better. Bitter or better? Which will you choose? And as it turned out, Northwest Arkansas turned out to be a really, really great place to be. You have probably heard of the fact that there are 3 very large corporations that have their headquarters there: Walmart, Tyson Foods, and J.B. Hunt. And all 3 of them became the first clients of my new agency. Isn't that something? Who would have ever thought? And what you realize in these moments, when things turn out to be so great later, you have this benefit of 20/20 vision, right? Where you look back over your shoulder and people are always like, wow, you had so much vision to move to Northwest Arkansas. And I was like, wrong. My husband had all the vision to move there. But God was at work to take us where we needed to go so that I could build my company. And I remember struggling in those early days thinking, how can I build a world-class company here in the middle of nowhere? It is so hard here, and it was hard there. I didn't have talent. There wasn't a lot of economic development infrastructure going on. All the waves were blowing against us, not with us. But it turned out really well. And we built a world-class company, and we had the chance to sell it to a world-class global organization. Who would have thought? So the lesson I learned is that sometimes you scrap the map and you go with the detours in life. Because if you do, you will find yourself in some pretty amazing places. So my question for you is, are you on a detour? Have you found yourself in a detour in life? You are somewhere where you do not want to be. It was not the plan. This was not what was supposed to happen. Whether that's for you spiritually a detour, physically maybe you're in a health detour, emotionally things are not working out the way you want. Maybe academically you're still trying to figure yourself out. This is not the plan. I thought I was going to be so clear, and I'm not. You've got to be willing to let go and let God. I remember my senior year at ACU, and you would think somebody like me is so clear and so focused and knew what she wanted, and I did know. But you know, my senior year, it was like it all came crashing down, and all this confidence I had kind of started to seep away. And I laid in bed every night. I lived in a house on East North 20th, and with a bunch of girls in my club. And every night I was sharing, I had one of the sort of the larger bedrooms, so I had a roommate, and every night we had a habit where we would turn the lights out and I would recite for Suzanne and me. She'd say the verse. We both need the verse. And it was Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and what? He will make your paths straight. Oh my goodness. A promise for a guide on the path, on the leadership journey. Wow. And that verse carried me into what I want to share as my next lesson with you. That you have to be able to embrace uncertainty in life. There are so many things that are going to hit you that you are completely lost about. Things that seem incredibly unclear. And I think of all of you as leaders, because leadership is not defined by title. It's defined by character, who you are, and people's willingness to follow you as you lead. You're a leader in your club. You're a leader in your dorm. You're a leader in your house. You're a leader in your classroom. You're a leader anywhere you want to be a leader, right? So leadership, I will tell you, is full of uncertainty. Most of leadership is uncertain. I always used to think, like, where's that handbook on leadership that tells you all the things you're supposed to do or that I'm supposed to know to do? And I never could find it. And especially in the entrepreneurial life, for those of you who think you want to build a company, I think it's even 10 times worse, because the buck stops here for everything in your business. And there were so many nights, not just the nights that I was laying awake trying to figure out, is this all there is? But there were so many nights, years and years and years, where I felt sleep deprived because I would lay in bed. And you know that narrative you have in your head that runs, right? Runs at night, where you're like, oh my goodness, this is not going to work. Something's going to go wrong. I used to have these dreams about, my husband would just laugh. I'd say, I had that dream again. And it was the dream that I forgot to pay somebody, and they were coming back to stalk me for money. You know, and I was like, have I paid everybody? I think I paid everybody. But you know, it's just your craziness in your head, right? The voices in your head are just nuts. And I would have this constant fear. And I would think to myself, I wish I knew the answers. I wish I could control the outcome. But so much of it, you don't know to begin to even try to control. So one of the qualities of effective leaders are leaders who are willing to embrace uncertainty and have the courage to stay on the journey and continue to lead anyway. Share a story with you. So as I told you, our company kind of started from scratch, and then it began to grow pretty seriously. And we went from probably, 12 to 15 people. There was a period of time we had to run up to about 60 people within just a few years. Actually, that was probably a 1 or 2 year jump, but our revenue was doubling year over year like this. It was just leaps and bounds, and it was really very exciting. But I will tell you what kept happening over and over again, and it was probably about every 3 months. I'm sitting at my desk, and somebody would come running into my office, literally, this is the scene, running into my office, and they're wringing their hands. They're like, Elise, we have this problem. And they would tell me the problem. They'd say, what should we do? And I would sit there and I'd think, I have no idea. I have no idea, because we'd never been here before, right? On our journey, we were growing, and so we'd never been to that stage of growth. And a lot of times the solutions that we were putting in place at the agency, we kind of drew them on the back of a napkin, like, you're going to report to this person, here's how the budget's going to work on that, talk to the client about this or that. And then 3 months later, they'd say, that doesn't work anymore because we've grown too much. Now things are kind of falling apart. We were like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? The deeper issue for me, though, was in that moment when my team would look at me, what are we going to do? And I would think, I don't know, but I think I'm supposed to know. So I was having this kind of crisis of confidence inside my head. I think I'm supposed to know because I'm the leader, right? I mean, like, I'm the owner of the company. If I don't know, what's going to happen to the company? Oh my goodness, this is not good. And then I was embarrassed to tell them I didn't know. Because I thought, how are they going to want to follow me if they think I don't have answers? And I will tell you what I learned in that moment that worked. I thought to myself, well, I could kind of, act like a gunslinger and say, we're going to do this, boom, just aim, fire, go, and hope it worked. Or I could tell them I'm going to think deeply about it and I will come back tomorrow with an answer, and then I could go home and freak out. I'd call everybody I knew, try to get an answer. And then I realized what I needed to do was to just simply tell them, I don't know. But here's the most important part of that. It's okay to say you don't know, but you can't end the sentence there. You must do whatever it takes to find out. It's okay to say you don't know, but you can't end the sentence there. You must do whatever it takes to find out. And the best leaders are the ones who say, let's figure it out together, because we're a team. And what have you just done if you do this? If you are authentic with your team in this way, what have you just done? You've role modeled what it means to be a learning leader. A learning leader is the most powerful, most successful, greatest impacting leader that there is. And I will tell you why. Because you will never know it all. Even as long as I have been in my industry for 20 some odd years, there are things that change all the time. I used to do a presentation called Don't Blink, and it was all on innovation. And the reason I did it was because I thought, you blink and something changes, especially in the world today. The world is changing too fast. There's too much innovation. There's too much disruption that is happening in every single industry. I speak a lot, and I speak on leading through change a lot. And I look at the audiences and people that are sitting in your seats, they have this look of fear on their face. They're like, things are changing so fast and we don't know what to do. What's the answer? And I'm like, you know what? You got to be a learning leader, because you will never know it all. The game changes too much. And if you are a lifelong learner, you will never be left behind. And that's the best part for a destination leader. I don't want to be left behind. I want to be out front. Even if it's just a half a step ahead of everybody else, I want to be on the front edge of it. So you cannot run from change. You cannot be afraid of what you don't know. What do? You embrace it. You run into it. And I will tell you something about fear. If you have fear in your life and you see it looming large like Goliath, a giant in your mind, and we all have something like this, that fear that is looming so large in your mind, you run from it, you hide from it, you avoid it at all costs. If you run toward that fear, the closer you get, the smaller it becomes. The closer you get, the smaller it becomes. Fear won't own you unless you let it. So embrace it. Run into the uncertainty of life, knowing, this is part of the key, you will figure it out as you go because you're smart and you're determined and you're tenacious. You don't give up. You stay the course. You have the courage to keep your hands on the handlebars, right? You are on the journey. You're not going to give up when things get hard. You will stay in the game. I love this lesson because you know what? I'm still learning it every day. Like Rick said, I've been going through a huge amount of change in my life right now. But I have been determined to try to be proactive about the change. What is it I want? What do I feel called to do? Where do I feel like the passion in me lies? What is it that I don't know that I have to figure out as I go? I don't know it all. I wish I did. I'd love to stand up here and tell you I knew it all. But you wouldn't believe me anyway. So you don't fake it. You just say, it's okay to say I don't know, but you don't end the sentence there. You do whatever it takes to find out. And when you do, and when you engage your team in helping you solve problems, and you're a collaborative leader, you also have one other really nice thing that happens in your life. You get a little more free time to enjoy the ride. This is one of the challenges that I faced for about 10 years. I am a control person. I like to be in charge. I know where I'm going and how I'm going to get there. And I see it. I see where I want to go. And I see where I want to take the company or the team or whatever. And that's great to be that way. That you can certainly get a lot done that way. But you can also die of a heart attack doing that, especially if you try to do it all. Now, for those of you who can relate, you know what I'm talking about. You try to control it all, you try to do it all, but you can't. Not really, not the way you want to be. You want to be a multiplying leader who pushes in and out and through their team. And then the ripple effect of your leadership is vast. Isn't that a better goal to have? So you know you have to learn to find the off switch in your work life and in your leadership journey. Got to find the off switch. You cannot work all the time. God has given us our work, for sure, but he didn't mean for us to work all the time. There is much more to life that you want to be able to enjoy. And you know, if you'd asked me a few years ago what my hobbies were, we kind of call this pre-motorcycling Elise, I would have looked at you and I would have said, hobbies? Ho, 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 you know, one of those very self-righteous laughs. Hobbies? I don't have time for hobbies. I have a business to build. I have a career. I have goals. I have things to do. I just don't have time for that. But in truth, I didn't make the time. I chose to spend all of my time on building my company. I made that choice. But at some point, I knew that was going to have to change. My husband sat down with me one night at the kitchen table, and he said, I got a call from some folks at the office. And I kind of looked at him because I knew the day I had had. And he said, Elise, they're worried about you. They said, she's finally let go of the rope. She's gone over the edge. That was a day I was not very proud of because I had sat at a table with a team and I pounded my fist on the desk because I was justified in my anger. Here was the level of expectation for excellence I had for them, and they were not living up to it. And I was done with that. I was tired of them not living up to the expectations I had, and I had had it. So not my finest hour. Didn't go over really well with the team. And someone who loves me very much called Ray and said, you're going to have to talk to her because she's gone too far now. And the problem was I had been like that for a while. And I remember sitting there with Ray at the kitchen table. And I looked at him. He said, you know, Elise, we love you. The kids and I, we love you. We're not going to leave you, but like you're not very much fun to be around. And he said, you've got to change. And you know what? I said to him, I know I need to change, but I don't know how. And that was when the crocodile tears just started to fall. I said, I don't know how to be different. I've been this way so long, I don't know how. But that began really the start of the conversation about, you're not sleeping, they called from the office, we need to take a vacation. And God has a way, when we are willing to open the door for him to take some control back of our lives, of leading us where we need to go. And I got on the back of a motorcycle, and I never looked back. And it was on that trip that I really began to realize what I was missing was the joy in the journey. I never had fun like this. Oh my goodness, this was like really fun. And I thought, I never have fun because I choose to spend all my time building my company. And I will tell you, and let me give you a caution here, just because you are good at something in your work life, in your professional life, doesn't mean you should only and always do that all the time. Because you're good at it, you will run to it because you get a lot of reward and satisfaction from it. But if you run to it all the time, it means you're also running away from something else. So I knew I needed to change. And that was when I got on the back of the motorcycle. But you know what? I got to tell you, the change I made was I decided it was time to invest in myself in a very different way. I really ended up investing in myself and then investing in others. So here's a couple pictures for you. I actually grew up as a runner in my youth. My brother ran cross country and track and all that in high school. And I had quit running for years and years because I said, well, I don't have time to do that. So I got back to running again. And I ran, this was a 10K that I ran. No, this was a half marathon I ran. But it was just the experience of getting back in the game again and being back on the journey. My son, down there in the bottom right-hand corner, he is a junior now at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. He was recruited there to play football, and he's now decided he wants to be a pilot when he gets out. So we will see if God has that plan for his journey. My daughter in the upper left-hand corner, she is officially, as of the end of December, halfway through law school at Penn State. She went to Lipscomb, and she's amazing. She's amazing. And my husband and I feel so blessed. But I learned how important it was to invest in yourself. You've got to find hobbies. You've got to find things you love. And my question for you is, what do you love that brings you pure joy just in the doing? Not the accomplishing. So when I ran, it's crazy, when I ran that half marathon, I remember I was the only one who was taking pictures and texting and posting, and I stopped at the halfway mark because my brother and sister-in-law were in a group that was behind me by a couple of minutes, and we agreed to wait at the halfway point together and take a picture together. And I remember when I crossed the finish line, I thought I've never felt so alive in my life. But I didn't run for time, because I did want to run for time, but I wouldn't let myself run for time. I ran for the joy of the experience. Just like when you take a motorcycle ride, you ride to ride. You don't ride to get anywhere. It's very different. So the investing of yourself, finding hobbies, the joys that you love. But if you're telling yourself, I don't have time, don't have the money to do the things that I love, I want to challenge you to rethink that. You have to make time to invest in yourself to recharge. And I will tell you a secret. When you recharge and you refresh, you've heard a lot about mindfulness and how mindfulness helps you to be very centered. Your prefrontal cortex is coming into play there, right? You're getting very centered. You're very focused on what you need to do. Have you heard about being in the flow? and how flow works for athletes who are performing in the zone at their very best. But you know what flow is. When you're doing something you love and you feel so alive. You've never felt so alive. You have to do that. And do you know when you do that, your brain is actually rewiring itself. That's called neuroplasticity. Learning new things, challenging yourself is actually going to help you become a better leader. That creative side of you has to be nurtured. The other thing that I learned in this lesson of Enjoy the Ride is to invest in fellow journeyers. I really wanted to have in the journey of my life people that I love, people that I hold so dear, my husband, my children. But guess what? I stood up a couple of years ago and I looked around and I thought, I have amazing nieces and nephews. So even if I didn't have kids of my own, I have young people who want me to be in their life. And guess what? It's pretty fun to be an aunt. You can spoil them and you can send them back to your brothers or your sisters or whoever owns them. But it's great to be an aunt. I have a MC and Rick and others know that my niece, Jasmine, my brother's daughter, is a freshman at ACU. I don't know if you know her, Jasmine Smith. She's in the College of Business. She's just a freshman, so she's sort of getting her feet underground, but she knows how to do the, She loves ACU. And her twin sister, Victoria, is a freshman at Lipscomb. And I took both of them on their college visits. And you can see I was kind of doing isn't this an awesome place? Could you see yourself here, And God was working in them, both on their days that they came to visit. They looked at me and they said, Aunt Elise, this is where I want to be. I was like, thank you, God, they're here. So I told the team there, I said, guys, now you got to watch out for Jasmine, She's going to be here. Please help her. Please pray over her. Please make sure she's okay. But there's so much joy when you invest in young people in your life too. And so you have to be very present and thoughtful and intentional if you want to keep fellow journeyers on this journey of life. You have to invest in them too. Relationships are the greatest gift that we have, but they don't just happen. They might start that way. Some of the coolest ones kind of just happen when they start. But if you want to keep them, you have to nurture them. You have to nurture them, which means you have to make choices about how you spend your time, right? So there's one other thing I wanted to share with you, which is sort of in my spirit of leaving it all on the mountain. Part of Enjoy the Ride is that you need to be there for those you love in the darkest of times, because you're going to want them there for you when you really need them. Just recently, my family had to face the reality of addiction. And this was something that had been coming for a while, that we knew, but didn't really want to accept the reality of it. And I will tell you, one of the darkest places I've ever been in my life was curled up in a fetal position on the floor of my closet, crying, when I realized that this was reality for our family. And I couldn't accept it. I was so angry, and I was embarrassed, and I was ashamed of this in our family. How does this happen? It happens to everybody else's family. It doesn't happen to my family. You know that feeling. And I was curled in this fetal position in my closet. And I cried until my eyes were just shut because I didn't want to accept it. And I also was mad that I couldn't fix it because I'm a destination person. I get things done. I find solutions. Surely I can fix this in my family. And you know how this story is going to end. You can't fix it in somebody else. It was kind of funny. I was laying there on the floor of my closet crying, and I was so spent from the tears. And I sat up and looked around in my closet, and then I was like, oh my gosh, this closet is a disaster. And I got up, and I had this huge burst of energy, and I started cleaning things and putting them in bags and hauling bags out to the garage, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And I was talking to a therapist out that later, and he said, interesting, because you felt the need to clean out the junk in your life. I said it was the only thing I did have control over in that moment. And so when I told Jennifer, I said, I've never shared this publicly. It's too new, it's too fresh. But I wanted to share it with you because I've started talking to just a few people to let them know about this challenge our family's facing. And more people that I've shared it with have said, I have the same challenge. And that's one of the things I realized about alcoholism is it is an isolating disease. And I've been going to Al-Anon meetings and doing all of that, just trying to learn. I've gotten the book. I've read through the 12 principles, and the first principle is, I am powerless over my loved one's use of alcohol, and my life has become unmanageable as a result. And I am still stuck on principle 1, because guess what? It's hard for me to accept that I can be powerless over anything, but I am. And isn't that a profound teaching that the Bible shares with us that Christ came to tell us all about anyway? The brokenness of man, the fall of man is why addiction exists in life today. And we are powerless over it. So I told Jennifer, I'd like to share this with you to say, if anybody is challenged with this in their life, in their family, a loved one, you struggle with yourself, I want to meet with you tonight. We'll pray. We'll pray over you. We'll pray over your family. And we'll go through the 12 steps. We'll just pray together intentionally and specifically about the disease of addiction, because I feel your pain. And I know it's real. But there is hope. There is hope, because the last lesson I want to leave with you is knowing that the journey of a leader, the success part, remember when I said, is this all there is? Do you remember that question? Is this all there is? And of course you knew what the answer is. As soon as I said it, we said, no, Elise, of course that's not all there is. But then what else is there? And this is where I want to tell you that at some point in your leadership career, and I hope it's sooner than it was in mine, there's going to be a switch that is going to get flipped. And when it does, everything changes. Because that's when you begin to realize that the journey towards significance is the real journey of a leader. The journey towards significance is the real journey of a leader. But I'm going to challenge your definition of the word significance. Now, when I say significance, what comes to your mind? If I say, who are leaders of significance? And I want a couple of you guys just shout out here. Who are leaders of significance that you think of? Famous leaders in time. Abraham Lincoln. Winston Churchill. Mother Teresa. You're getting the idea here. Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, there's so many people. Great inventors. I've had people in business saying, Steve Jobs and others who changed the business world because they were so creative and inventive, doing something significant. And I always thought to myself, aren't those people so fortunate? They're doctors, they're philanthropists, they're politicians. They actually have impact on the world. They do things of significance. But I'm a PR person. I'm never going to do anything. And even my own husband, he saves lives every day. I will never do anything of significance. And I was so wrong. You know why? Because I was defining significance in my pursuit of it in all the wrong ways. You see, significance is not about becoming significant yourself. It's about creating significance for others. And this is where the switch flips. When you have the realization that it's not about you, it's about everybody else. And that is when your leadership journey will really get traction. Because the journey towards significance is the far better journey to be on. Now, I will tell you in all honesty, I loved being on the journey to success. I did. And those are just and good rewards for hard work. They are. Those are good. But they are not all that satisfies. You will need a journey towards significance. and you will realize it has nothing to do with you, and it's about everyone else. So I have a question for you. Actually, 3, as you'll see there. Where's your there? Where are you trying to get to? What's your goal in life, your dream? World domination is okay. That's, I'm not the only one who had that dream or still has that dream. It's okay to think about that, but I want to challenge you to think about a destination that is far more than that. Because significance and doing things for others is not about this sort of lifelong chase for doing something big. Because if it were, and I think that's what I thought is, well, I'll never do anything big, it's not really going to count for anything. It wasn't really significant. And I was having a pity party a couple of months ago when I was going through some of this thought process about transition. And I said, gosh, I wish I could have done something significant in my leadership journey. And my husband looked at me and said, okay, I cannot believe we're having this conversation. He said, what about all of the jobs you created? What about the culture of family you built at your business? What about the clients that you treated honorably, that you wanted to do the right and best thing for? He said, these things, Elise, are worth something. And I realized how right that he was, in that it isn't this endless pursuit for one big thing to define significance in your life. It is about doing the right thing, one person and one day at a time, the person that's right in front of you. Doing good for others just because you have been placed in a moment in time to do good for them. And if you do good, just the person right in front of you, that spirit moves you to do good for them, just do it. And then you stand back and you watch how amazing God is to multiply that one way that you are a channel of blessing to others. And if you could string together days, weeks, months, and years of that, don't you think that's a life of significance for a leader? It is. That's my goal. So I want to challenge you as you think through these questions. What's my destination? Am I on the right path to get there? And what's missing? That these are good questions for you to ponder on the mountain as you think about where you want to go. Matthew 13, 44, 45, you know this one. A man finds a treasure in a field, and what does he do? In his joy, he goes and he sells everything he has so he can claim the treasure. Or a merchant who searches for pearls of great worth, finds one. And what does he do? He sells all that he has to go and purchase it. Because they've figured out how to pursue what is truly significant in life. And all of this leads you, hopefully, to remember my lesson I want you to kind of take away from all this, which is the journey matters. It really does. Life is meant to be savored and experienced. God meant for us to be alive and vibrant on this journey of life. He meant for us to fully embrace it. I always think to myself is life is meant to be experienced, not accomplished. Right? Thoreau went into the woods to live deeply so that when time came to die, he didn't have to say, I never lived it all, right? What did that mean? He was searching for deeper meaning and purpose in life. And I think that's just a human instinct. I think we all want that. But you've got to make the journey matter. It's okay to have theirs, okay? But you've got to also make the journey matter. Now, I also told Jennifer I have a surprise for you. I brought a copy of my book. You could tell this was kind of a game-changing, life-changing thing for me. And about 2 years ago, I sat down to write a book. That was one of those journeys where I didn't know if I could do it, didn't know if anybody would buy it, or if they read it and they hated it. I now know for all of those of you who are artists, you play music, you draw, you write, and when you put it out there for the world to see it, you just kind of cringe and wait to see how is it received. So I had it published this time a year ago by McGraw-Hill is my publisher. So I went the traditional publishing route. And this past year has been filled with lots of journeys and adventures all over the world to speak to leaders and share lessons with them. But most importantly for me is the chance to meet and hear from them about the things that they are challenged with and where they're trying to go on their leadership journey. So I told Jennifer, I said, I'm going to sign a book for somebody, and I'm going to give it to you. Jennifer, do we have pieces of paper that we want to pass around? Thank you, MC. Okay, so what we're going to do is two things. Because of my book, and then also, yes, the next thing. Oh, well, hold on a second. There it is, there it is. I didn't go back. I have a free download for you. This is something I've put together, and I've got several of these that I've done on my website, elisemitchell.com. If you want to go check it out, you can. I've got lots of free downloads on leadership. And that's where I write to a blog. I have a blog that I post to about every 2 weeks. And in my posts, I do very much in the trenches, practical leadership advice for leaders to face the battles of the day, whatever they're going, whether it's difficult decisions or trying to learn how to master the art of delegation, how to know how to take the next step in your career, whatever it is. I've got lots and lots of topics I post about. So what we're going to do is we're going to send out the link to the Google Drive. If you're interested in being put into the drawing for the book, sign your name up, name and email. If you're interested in getting this free download from me, it's about a 10-page download. It's the Journey Mindset Checklist. It has 7 principles and lots of tips and advice on how you can be a more journey-minded leader. So if you're interested in getting that and getting on my email list, so you'll get my blog every couple of weeks, then sign on to the form. We will draw for the book. Jennifer, when do you think we should draw? Maybe by tomorrow, because I'll be here tomorrow. What's today? Wednesday? I'm sorry, I've been all over the world. I've got I literally it in my head too. We'll draw tomorrow. So go on today to the Google Docs form, put your name and your email, and you'll be eligible for the drawing. And I will customize, I will personalize the book to you and sign it and let you take it home with you. And regardless if you get drawn for the book, I will send you the Journey Mindset Checklist. Deal? Okay. The journey matters as much as the destination. Please don't forget this, guys. And all of your excitement for life and the desire to get where you want to go, you've got to make sure you make the journey matter. Because trust me, it does. Thank you very much.